All right. Hey, everybody. Bill Plashke, Sports Columnist, Los Angeles Times. I'm here with three of my esteemed colleagues, Mike DiGiovanna, Jack Harris, and Jorge Castillo. All have extensive baseball backgrounds to talk about what next. Everybody says play ball. The lockout's done. It ended today. What next for the teams? And I'll start with Jorge Castillo. What about the Dodgers? You're very close to the Dodgers. What do the Dodgers do now? What's their priority list? What are we going to see in the next few days?
Yeah, well, there's going to be a huge frenzy across baseball right now with free agency. Over 300 free agents now hitting them back on the market, I guess. The market, what do you call it? The market closed, the market's reopened. I don't know, whatever, but the market's open again. And, one of the biggest names out there connected to the Dodgers is Freddie Freeman. As you wrote, Bill, you think they should sign him. There's a lot of smoke there. I heard there is interest between the Dodgers and Freddie Freeman. Heard they were in on him before the lockout. The fact that the Atlanta Braves did not sign him before the lockout or re-sign him is pretty telling. That to me is the biggest question mark. Obviously, two other big ones is Clayton Kershaw, he's still a free agent, still hasn't signed with anybody, and Kenley Jansen hasn't either. Two pillars from the last decade of Dodgers baseball. So those are two, those are sort of the big questions right now. And obviously, I think Jack can speak on this one. Trevor Bauer is a Dodger, and he might report to camp Saturday. I think Saturday's first day of camp. He was at Union camp. You saw on Twitter. I think we all saw on Twitter that Trevor Bauer was at the Union sort of camp that they had going on. But Jack, what do you know about that situation?
Yeah, right now the Dodgers are basically still waiting on guidance from the league, which is really where they had left things last season after Trevor Bauer was put on administrative leave following the allegations of sexual assault against him. I think that there's still an expectation that the league is going to administer some punishment on him, even though he wasn't charged with a crime in a permanent restraining order was not assessed on him. He can appeal any sort of suspension or punishment that the league levies. Nobody under the league's joint domestic violence policy has done that, has challenged the league's decision or failed to come to a settlement with the league on how long they'll be suspended. So he can try to fight it if there is a punishment, but even while that's going on, he wouldn't be able to pitch for the Dodgers. And then whenever that's all settled, I think it'll be up to the Dodgers to decide if they'll cut him, if he has a future with the team. And that's something that, I think, again, the expectation is he probably won't pitch again for the Dodgers, but they still haven't said that publicly. They still haven't, removed him from the organization yet. So I don't expect him at this point. I don't expect that you'll see him at camp. I think that, things will move kind of quickly now that the lockout's over regarding his situation, but there's still a lot of unknowns about what comes next with him and his situation with the league.
All right, DG, what about the Angels? What do the Angels need to do?
What about the Angels, Bill? Well, like it is every winter, lockout or not, they need pitching. They were able to bring in Noah Syndergaard and Michael Lorenzen before the lockout on one-year deals, but Syndergaard had elbow surgery 2 years ago, has thrown 2 innings in the last 2 years, so he's a huge question mark. Lorenzen is he's moving from the bullpen to the rotation. That's no sure thing. So they'd like to bolster the rotation with, one frontline starting pitcher, but the problem they're facing right now is almost pretty much all the top free agent starters signed before the lockout. Scherzer, Robbie Ray, Marcus Stroman, and the pickings are a little slim in that market right now. They may have a lot better success in the bullpen, which is really deep in free agent relievers, veteran guys, proven guys, a couple of closers. To me, if you can't bolster that rotation with a really good starter, they'd be better off adding to a bullpen that looks pretty good so far at the back with Raisel Iglesias and Aaron Loup.
So what do we think about, speaking of free agents, probably the biggest free agent, even though I wrote about Freddie Freeman, is still Clayton Kershaw. Do we think he's coming back to the Dodgers? What? Anybody? I mean, I think he is. I think he realizes his longevity here is important to him. He wants him to build a statue. He wants to be Kobe Bryant, play in one town for his entire career. I think he comes back. I think they bring him back. What does anybody else think?
I think it depends who you talk to right now. There's obviously the connection between him and the Texas Rangers because he's from Dallas. He lives in Dallas. He's friends with the Rangers GM, Chris Young. It doesn't sound like he's going to retire, which was a thought coming into the offseason. And then, of course, coming back to the Dodgers, which I think on a lot of levels makes the most sense, especially for a guy who has sort of been defined by his competitiveness in his career and his drive to try to win. The Dodgers are obviously much more suited to being a contender right now. I think especially if he comes back than the Rangers would be. But, it's a big unknown. And if the Dodgers don't bring him back or aren't able to get him back, it's going to leave a bit of a hole in their rotation. So, like, if I'm picking right now, I still think it's more likely he ends up back in LA for a couple more years. But it's definitely not a guarantee as the market reopens right now.
Well, Jorge, you've actually been to Clayton's house, spent time with him across the street from his daughter's school, down the road from Rangers Stadium. What do you think?
Yeah, what Jack mentioned, he is driven by that's sort of the Clayton Kershaw ethos is his competitiveness, his drive. But something else that's really taken up, that's made up Clayton Kershaw over the last few years is his family. And he loves his family. He loves being with his family. He cares about his family a lot. And his kids, his two oldest kids now are they're getting older. I think two of his oldest kids now are in school, and that matters to him. And when I was there, they talked about it a lot. It's getting harder every year to go out to Los Angeles, to go to spring training, to get away from the family. You play in Texas and you're 20 minutes from home. And, you leave for spring training, then you're back. And I think that's going to be a huge push-pull. And I think, Chris Young is a close friend of his, a very good friend of his, and the general manager of the Rangers. So I think it's going to be, it's a tough decision. And it's also one that Clayton Kershaw necessarily doesn't have to make right away. Now, I think he probably will, but he also could wait, see where the dust settles with different things. And I also heard before the lockout that other teams reached out, at least 2 or 3 other teams were interested. So it's going to end up being Rangers Dodgers. I think it probably already is that he's going back to the Dodgers and we just don't know about it yet, or he's going to the Rangers. But it's going to be super interesting one way or the other. I don't expect him to be necessarily ready by the start of the season. Even if he chooses to come to the Dodgers, they'll have to figure things out on the other end. And I also think the Dodgers, we're talking about free agency quite a bit here. The trade market, I think, is going to be, as the kids say, lit, right? I don't know. It's going to be crazy.
You're one of the kids. Don't say the kids. Exactly. You're one of the kids, Jorge.
We're not talking about the trade market. The Dodgers and probably the Angels too. They're both investigating. They always investigate both markets. And, Andrew Friedman loves getting creative with trades, man. And there's going to be a lot of guys out there available, I think, via trade once the dust settles with the free agency especially. So that's something else to keep an eye on with the Dodgers.
Speaking of being creative, I'm going to close it up here with one last final question. It's very important to Dodger fans on one side or the other. Dave Roberts, he's entering the last year of his contract. He cannot be a lame duck. It'll be a nightmare season, but they haven't given him an extension yet. What do you think, Deej?
I think he's coming back. I think there's interest on both sides to get a deal done. And I've been doing this almost as long as you, Plash. And when there's interest on both sides, it usually happens.
Does anybody? Yeah, I think Roberts is coming back. And I mean, does anybody else feel differently about that?
No, and I think we'll see a deal done probably relatively soon. The way that Dave Roberts has spoken publicly, some of the things, from people within the team, I think there's definitely, the mutual interest that they've publicly stated, I think is true. Obviously, he's been very successful in his tenure. And I don't think letting him manage in the last year of his contract is really good for anybody.
April 8th, Dodgers open at Colorado opening day. April 7th, Angels open at home against the Astros. Walker Buehler is going to pitch for the Dodgers for sure opening day. Who's going to start for the Angels opening day against the Astros?
Got a little right-hander named Shohei Ohtani. You may have heard of him.
Oh. So he'll be the opening day starter?
Yeah, I guess they could throw Syndergaard a bone. It depends maybe how the rotation lines up, where they want to. Sometimes they like to keep Shohei on Sunday schedule. I can't see how they don't give it. I can't see how they don't give it to Ohtani after the year he had.
That would be awesome. Ohtani one night opening day, Walker Buehler the next night opening day.
Well, the best thing is in the year of the universal DH, the Angels will open the season without a DH in their lineup.
Oh, that's right. and of course the cheating Houston Astros are in town. Everybody come out and boo them. That'll be awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Again, baseball's back, and follow everything in the LA Times, LATimes.com. I have a column today about Freddie Freeman. What else are we working on before we leave? Anybody else How many stories you doing, Jack? 10?
I mean, it'll depend a little bit if we get a bunch of signings tonight or tomorrow, but we'll at least have an FAQ up there for fans, and then also something I think in the morning about how some of these guys were handling the lockout and why that even though the schedule's gotten kind of weird, you're still going to see some high level baseball on the field this year.
What's your big story, young fella, Jorge?
I'm actually going. I'll be going out to Arizona here in the next couple of days, if not by early next week, and I'll be teaming up with Jack, just trying to plug all the holes that the few holes it leaves behind. But as of right now, just kind of scoping out, waiting for Dave Roberts, who's going to speak to the media tomorrow, Friday morning, access on Saturday, and I'm sure there'll be plenty to write about.
How about you, Deej? In fact, Deej, you're in Arizona right now.
I am. I had a nice interview with Sam Bachman, their number one pick from this past year. That's probably going to have to get put on the back burner now, though. I'm sure we'll probably look into something on Noah Syndergaard. He's a pretty outspoken guy, had some pretty interesting tweets during this lockout. Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon coming back from major injuries, huge pieces that the Angels are relying on this year. And then, of course, Ohtani draws a crowd wherever he goes. Coming off that MVP season, what's he going to do to repeat it? How's he going to stay healthy for another year? And maybe in the back burner, Joe Madden's also entering the last year of his contract too. I don't know that I'll get to all those stories in 1 week. I better not.
You know what? I just want to say,
what's going on.
You've got to read. If you love baseball and you love Southern California teams, read the LA Times, LATimes.com. We're the best. We cover baseball locally better than anybody else in the country. These guys are right in the center of that coverage. Thanks for watching. See you online.